G'day, hi, and welcome. All right, let's do this. Okay, so this week in World Crazy. It's not Friday yet, and Monday, I said, "Wow, how crazy is the world going to be by Friday?" I should not have asked that question. I should not have. Sometimes you should just not ask questions at all, but I did, and I'm going to tell you. so, I guess the Venezuelan topic is kind of just taking up the world. The world is kind of baffled by all this. Like, what is the hell is going on? Donald Trump is baffled that his base is really like he's like devastatingly falling in the polls to the point where Donald Trump's like, well, look, if we lose the midterms and stuff like that, they're going to put me in jail. They're going to impeach me and put me in jail. Well, maybe if you weren't such an ass clown, maybe that wouldn't happen. Now, we just got to look at, again, we saw this during the COVID thing where the true colors of people came out. You always hear that saying where if it was World War II, would I have went along with the Nazis? Well, in 2020, we found out who would have went along with, along with the program, right? Well, with this, we're finding out which MAGA people are actually real neocons. Which the good news is most of the MAGA people are not for what Trump is doing. They voted for the exact opposite. Now, the liberals and the Democrat type people, they have extreme hatred for people on the right anyway. Like, oh, you voted for this, you voted for this. No, MAGA did not vote for intervention. They voted for the opposite. They didn't want any more forever wars. They didn't want any more regime change. And that's exactly what Trump ran on. In fact, he ran on, in his first term, he was going to arrest Hillary Clinton for doing that kind of stuff. Gee, what happened, right? So long story short, no, that's not what the MAGA people wanted. Okay, and the other thing they didn't want was like basically kidnapping a leader from. It's so bizarre. Like, it's so bizarre. And not only that, they didn't really get regime change in Venezuela at the end of the day. It really didn't change much. So what was it all for? Well, I think I'm going to agree with Cameron McGregor on this one a little bit. That a lot of it is just posturing to see if they could get an easy win. Because, see, Trump comes in. Okay, everybody knew he was going to do terrorists, but they didn't expect him to do ridiculous terrorists. The left did because the left see Nazis everywhere, and again, they just have broken clock just happened to be right on that one. Because they assume the worst of white people and right wing people and stuff like that. They really hate us, right? So, but most of the MAGA people were like, no, we don't. We want the manufacturing to come back to the United States. And I can't fault that. I'm in Canada here. I want manufacturing to come back here, and it slowly is. I mean, there's a lot of crisis that we're dealing with up here that Carney has to deal with. But Carney's been doing, again, I said this a million times, if Pierre Poilievre or Trump were doing what Carney was doing, his base would be praising him left, right, and center. And the reason being is because Carney has basically stolen probably about half of Pierre Poilievre's platform, right? These guys are industrious. They're not to the point where a lot of liberals are mad at Carney that voted for him because they're like, oh, he's too conservative. He's a closet conservative. He's not. He's just a 90s style liberal. That's all he is. And again, it's like he's not perfect. I don't like him particularly. No, I didn't vote for him. But, I am a fair man, and I know you're not allowed to say anything good about the opposition, right? It's like, our guy's good, he can do no wrong, and your guy can do no right, and that's it. And I don't look at the world like that. That's why, I'm more of a political atheist. Yes, I'm right-leaning, but I'm not, I don't have any illusions that, like, the GOP is going to save the day down there in the States. Or the Democrats when they take a massive communist sweep in the next election. They're going full comtard on you, for sure. Because, like like the left is so radicalized and so violent and whatever, and you always hear, oh, right wing violence, and it's like it's usually if you were an alien and you came to this planet and you had to figure it out for yourself, you'd figure out that okay, if you were to take the amount of violence on the right versus the violence on the left, it's not even comparable. You know what I mean? The left is very violent. You got all these people saying, well, Antifa doesn't exist, when it's so well documented that they do. Sure, they're not an official government organization, but they are funded by the state as agitation groups or NGO groups or whatever. Like, I mean, it's, you know, like to when I see like what I call like more intellectual left wing people like dismiss that and go down the oh well they're Nazis and you know there's Nazis everywhere but the communist Antifa don't exist. I'm like okay well number one they do you know what I mean they do they're openly admitted what they are. It's been well documented since the 1920s. You know. It's you know a spin-off out of the Bolshevik Revolution. You know it led to the Frankfurt School and all that stuff. Eventually, it's well documented, right? So the thing is that the left-right divide. People are still in that ether, not realizing that it doesn't really matter which way you vote. You get the same guy anyway. So you voted out a neocon just to get in a left-wing neocon just to get a right-wing neocon. The only difference is the Trump administration is a little bit more on the chin and direct, saying, well, yeah, we're doing this because we're doing this, right? They don't try to find as many, you know, oh, we're doing this for women and children and democracy. And the hypocrisy on the whole Venezuelan thing is just, it's beyond, right? No rational human being can accept that this was a good thing. Like, nobody. Or that it was a just thing, you know? And clutch my pearls, how dare you say that? You're just no. You need to think a little more critically. It's bad for many reasons, and worse for the reasons you're probably not even considering. You know what I mean? No, this is we're in a really, really dangerous situation right now. Number one, Trump has made, and his administration, and you have to understand, like Trump goes along with this stuff, but most of these ideas are not his. You know what I mean? And this is what people got to understand. The same thing under Joe Biden. Like Joe Biden was horrible. He was the worst president of the United States until Trump 2.0. And I will still maintain, if you were to judge Trump 1.0 across the board against every other president that's ever been, he was the best one overall, economically prosper, you know, whatever. Joe Biden, you know, gave Trump a shitbag of an economy. That said, Trump didn't really. He was turning the ship into the right direction for the first 2 years, and then he just Israel for the you know, and now we see that he's just beholden to Israel and the the stakeholder capitalists, whatever, doing everything pretty much the World Economic Forum wants, everything, all the Agenda 2030 stuff, the Agenda 21 stuff. Like he's all for it. It's just it's okay when our guy does it. And again, it's no, it's a 4D chess plan. Look, the UN wanted to ban cars. The UK wanted to ban gasoline-powered cars by 2025. Well, mission accomplished. Why? Because Trump they didn't ban them because nobody can ban them without massive backlash, right? So what do? Well, you just make cars so unaffordable that nobody can buy them. That's what Trump has done, right? The new vehicle prices, like I say, it takes months. Like the prices you're paying today, okay, is a result of the tariffs from the beginning of the year. And it takes a long time. Like people think you feel the tariff right away. You do feel some of it, but you don't feel the full force of it for at least a year to 2 years after. And like this time next year, like it's going to be, what planet are we going to be on? I have no idea. We are going into some really, really harsh times. Trump knows this. He's not a stupid man. He's an egotistical man. He's a bit of a psycho. There's no doubt about that. They all are. Joe Biden was senile because of his medication, and the Democrats lied about him being on the medication, or they weren't coming forth of it, which was a violation of the Constitution down there. But they got, again, the bad guys never go to jail, right? Trump comes in, and Trump is starting to lose the plot a bit because I don't think he's turning senile like some people think, but he is an 80-year-old man, and that can happen quick. You can be sharp as a tack at 80, but by 82 you can be completely riddled with Alzheimer's. Right? It is what it is. But the thing is I think what it is Trump is stressing out because it's like everything he's trying is not working because he's doing the total opposite of what he said he's going to do. And look, there's no way out of this mess. People think that when we protest vote back to the Democrats, they're going to fix everything. No, they're going to make it worse. Believe it or not, the Democratic people, okay, I hate Trump so much now. You are going to hate whichever Democrat comes in even more. Why? Because it's just the only way out is we have to let this thing die. We have to let it burn itself out. The quicker we let the economic collapse hit, yes, it's going to kill millions. The only thing I could say is just be prepping. If you're one of those normies that, oh, nothing bad ever happens, oh, nothing ever happens, nothing, you suffer that fate. If you're smart, no matter how expensive everything on the shelf is right now, it's on sale. It's on sale. Because when the hyperinflation hits, you'll find out right away that you should have stockpiled on stuff. You know what I mean? What I'm doing myself is, okay, I started prepping in 2008, and I've kind of prep on, prep off, prep on, prep off. But one thing about prepping is it's a means to an end. What you really want is sustainability. And if you're like me in the countryside, well, maybe, a micro farm, hobby farm type of thing, if you have time for it. I know a lot of people don't have time because they have to work, all the time to the point where it's like, you can't do anything for yourself. But you can store up stuff. If you can't farm, stock up. Get things like dehydrators. Make powdered potatoes, make powdered eggs, powdered butter. You can do all these things and get the and all the stuff you can do whether you're in the city or whatever. And you could do this stuff, and you could stockpile stuff that will last a long, long time. Basically food preservation, so that you have at least 2 years worth of food for you and your family. Now, if you're just going out and buying the expensive stuff, of course, you're not going to get very far. But, you buy bulk rice, go buy the bulk stuff. Bulk beans. Beans last forever. If you put them in mason jars with oxygen absorbers, they'll last longer than you'll be alive. As long as the seal stays good and, there's no rust on the lid, everything's fine. And you'd say, yeah, but is it going to go stale after a while? It'll probably go a little stale, but it'll probably be safe to eat in 20 years, which hopefully by that time we finally found a solution to all this corruption. Look, the entire government system globally every world leader has failed their people bar none. There is no good world leaders anywhere. There are no good politicians anywhere. They've all sold us out to big corporate interests, to the extremely horrible Zionist banking system, to the war machine, you name it, right? So let's get back to the Venezuela thing. Okay, so Trump is sitting there going, why is my approval rating just tanking? Well, number one, the MAGA people did not vote for regime change in Venezuela. They did not vote for, the Venezuelan people, we're going to help them out with the oil sales, they're going to prosper. No, they voted for, when do Americans get the America First thing? When does that come to them, right? And it's not, especially if you're a straight white male. Again, the studies have already shown. Now there's lawsuits saying, yes, okay, for the past 10 years, the policies have been discriminating against straight white males to the point where nobody's hiring them, right? Why are all the straight white males turning into groypers and stuff? Can't figure it out. You know what I mean? And what are the Democrats do? Well, they just double down on, you're racist and bigot. Just because we won't hire you for a job because you're white, you shouldn't complain about that. You know what I mean? That's the way they think. It's because it's pure hatred that they have for white people, right? And again, all that's been nursed in the Frankfurt School of Thought. Critical theories, the critical race theory, all that stuff has been basically bred into society the past at least 2 generations full bore, But I think it's dying out because most people don't want it on the left, on the right. Most people don't want that. People just want to, people just want to be able to live, right? That's why don't listen to the hyper-partisan left, don't listen to the hyper-partisan right. They're both retarded, and they're both the problem. They're both the problem. The two-party system is a uniparty, right? The Democrats and Republicans, no one should ever vote for those two parties ever again. Ever. Vote somewhere else. You know what I mean? But I don't want to throw away my vote. Well, for you guys on the left, one of the things you're going to notice is that the Republican people, they're going to be throwing their vote away like you saw between Obama and Romney, right? It's just like, it didn't matter which guy you voted for, you got Obama, right? Kind of like up here, we voted in Carney, but we kind of got Pierre Poilievre light, right? And Stephen Harper light, which is not a bad thing. Now, Pierre Poilievre said something stupid enough. The guy is normally smart enough to not to put his finger in his mouth, but he's got to get a new strategy. The angry conservative, 1950s style angry conservative neocon talking points are not going to resonate with the younger generation as much. He needs to appeal to like the Groypers. He needs to appeal to the Gen Z, the Gen Alpha, upcoming Gen Alpha. He needs to reassure these people that they're going to have a future, right? And it can't be just about the housing thing. The biggest problem Canada has is our housing scam that we have going on. Basically, the reason why our housing prices are so high is because it's a way for foreign investment to launder money. You want to get paid off? Okay, well here, I'm going to buy this house. You buy it from me for $2 million. And that's how they launder the money, right? It's a big known problem in Canada, right? And that's why foreigners should not be allowed to buy property in Canada, period. Full stop. Houses are in it. Because it creates the housing crisis. I'm sure the same thing's happening in the States or whatever. But you need to basically have the America First agenda down there, Canada First agenda up here, and you need to let people know that, okay, you know what, if you're a white dude, or even if you're not a white dude, like let's say you're an African American down there, and you go to apply for a job down there, well, some H-1B is going to get that job before you. Is that fair? You know what I mean? And again, who brought that in? Both neocons, both conservative and liberals have brought in this temporary foreign workers. Why? Because the conservatives want the cheap labor, the liberals want the votes, right? And and then of course there's just the anti-white agenda where, again, the GDP numbers in Canada go up with the immigration. They also go down with the immigration. So 60,000 people come into the country. Suddenly your GDP numbers drop because you've got all these unemployed people. But then because you're bringing in a slave class and underpaying them under the Trans-Pacific Partnership, which is a horrible, horrible deal for Canada, the United States, and everything. Again, all these corporations, there's labor shortages. There's no labor shortages. The domestic population cannot get jobs. Okay, up here, you stole the land from the Indians. Yeah, okay, well, let me put it to you this way. If a native guy goes to get a job, he can't get that job. Why? Even if you hate all the white people in Canada, that's fine. But if you like all these people that try to weaponize that against white people, you stole the land from me. Number one, you don't understand the history and what took place and what the world was like 500 years ago. Number two, you're only saying that because you're using it as a weapon against white people. That's it. Anybody that understands the history will number one, you had a European Brothers War land right in the middle of native tribal wars in an unstable, globally at war planet. You know what I mean? And then we're going to judge people, 500 years later for what they know. The thing with Canada is it eventually turned into a very solid foundation of a country. No country's perfect. No country's origins are perfect. And when you understand that, that argument kind of falls flat. And not only that, it falls even more flat when it's like, okay, well, because we hate white people, because you stole land from the Indians, that means we got to bring in 8 million people in 10 years. Okay? And those people are going to get all the jobs. They're going to get, the native people aren't even going to get the jobs. They're not even going to have running water because we can't afford to put running water on the native reserves. Why? Because we're giving all this free stuff to all these immigrants, buying them houses, all the welfare fraud. It's a nightmare. So the system has to basically be torn down and rebuilt. There's no reforming it at this stage. It's just too corrupt. And all the people standing in the way, the liberals stand in the way of like getting reform done. The conservatives, they offset, like they don't redo anything that was done. Like they don't undo the damage. They just, oh well, we're going to now focus on Israel. We're going to focus on Venezuela. We're going to focus, anything but fix the fucking problem, right? So the only way out is through, and it's going to be fire and brimstone. 2026 is just going to be fire and brimstone. Now that's half the thing. That's why, like, these people still stuck in the ether of left versus right. You can be right wing, you can be left wing, but you should be for your nation first. You know what I mean? And if if anybody can be a citizen, then nobody's a citizen. You know what I mean? Like, people need distinction. And the problem is when you bring in all these groups that don't integrate, you're importing, all the ethnic conflicts of those people as well. And then when you go bomb their country and say, okay, well, yeah, now we're going to take refugees from there because those people will integrate. Yeah. So we bomb the country, create the problem. Basically, Venezuela is just a micro version of what they did in Iraq, and it's not going to work either. The plan has already failed. Oh yeah, we're going to get all this oil and whatever, and we'll put Alberta out of business because we got all this oil. Donald Trump thinks in about he's good on his feet. He's Herculean in this way, where he's good on his feet. He's fast to respond. He's quick that way. But he has no long-term thought, like Hercules. He has no long-term thought, right? It gets taken advantage of almost like clubbing a baby seal, because it's just like, tell him what he wants to hear, and he's Stalinesque in that way, where he surrounds people around him who tell him exactly what he wants to hear. So if he comes up with a plan, and he thinks it's a good idea, everybody else better tell him, oh, yeah. Sire, it's a great plan, sire. It's a great plan. It's the Stalin effect. The only difference is when Stalin's 5-year plan didn't work, he shot people. He had people shot. It's like, so if you disagreed with him, you got shot. If you agreed with him because you were a yellow belly too much to stand up to him, then the plan failed. Well, he shot you for failure. So, the last thing you wanted to do was be close to Stalin. You know what I mean? Well, Trump, at least he's not shooting people yet. So the manifest destiny thing and American exceptionalism, people understand it in different ways. And there's a good and a bad to it. The problem is when the internally manifest destiny works for the United States. Freedom, liberty, pursuit of happiness. That works for Americans, right? To a degree, it has its faults, but to a degree. Individualism has its faults. Hyper-individualism is a disaster. It's been a disaster. This idea of we never stand for anything other than ourselves. This is why libertarianism always is going to fail just as much as communism. And communists and libertarians are two sides of the same coin. They're both ridiculous. You want as much libertarianism as you can get. You don't want any communism, but you do need rules and checks and balances. Or else what libertarians find out is that the communist will never leave the libertarian alone. Wherever you go. There's no, here, you do you over here, and we do us over here. It doesn't work like that. It never did, never will. So, anyway, I digress. So, Trump comes up with the scheme of tariffs, judging a 2025 economy the same way you would judge an 1840 economy, right? McKinley stuff, right? And I think it was like the 1840s or whatever. Or 1880s, whatever year it was. So McKinley, okay, yes, he made money with the tariffs, but the tariffs were normal around the world at the time. It was how you did trade balances, but they didn't just do tariff for this blanket tariffs for the sake of doing tariffs. They really worked out trade balances. They basically said, okay, well, you're going to undercut us here, so you don't wipe out our markets. We'll have a tariff that brings you at parity so that you don't oversaturate our markets. Everybody's okay with this. Anybody, like I'm not opposed to a tariff system, but it has to have common sense based on it, so you don't completely collapse your fucking economy and half the planet's economy. Mind you, this is what the globalists want. They do want to collapse the U.S. dollar and collapse all the economy so they can come in with a one world currency. They tried it in 2008; it didn't work. Again, and not a single bankster went to jail, except for two in Iceland that went to jail for like 2 years or something like that. That's the best we got. Out of all the death and destruction that came out of the two, and that's all we're doing, guys, is living it through the death rolls of the 2008 collapse. Like this is just the prolonged version of it. And I said in about 2010, because I figured we were going to collapse again using the 1929 to 1933 model of economic collapse, saying that, okay, well, 4 years later, you get the real collapse. You get the speed bump in 1929, and then you get the real collapse in 1933. So, okay, 2008, 2012, guys, that's when the big ones come. But they didn't. They came up with modern monetary policy or theory or whatever, which means helicopter money. Just keep printing, right? And when you print it, do something with it. Okay, buy democracy JDAMs. Give people the alternative. You buy our debt, okay, or we drop democracy JDAMs on it. What Max Kaiser called the death and debt-based economy. You saw a version of it the other, Monday or Sunday or whatever it was in Venezuela. That's what it looks like. You go and you bomb a country in the name of freedom and liberty and blah, 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 even though it's bullshit. At least they didn't try that angle of it this time. This time they just went right for, it's about drugs. No, it's about getting the oil. We're invading Venezuela because they weren't pumping enough oil and selling enough oil. Or was it that Venezuela was going to sell oil outside the petrodollar like Saddam and Gaddafi? Oh, here we go again, right? But somehow there was all these like neocon, a lot of them are the Israeli lobby. They're always that group, you know what I mean? And it's like at some point, like, how can you not notice? You know what I mean? Like, it's just like, call me anti-Semite, call me whatever you want, but there's a theme. You know what I mean? There's a theme there. Prove me wrong. You call me whatever you want, but you prove me wrong every single time, right? So where does Israel fit in this? Well, Netanyahu meets with Trump. I think that was more probably over like, okay, let's go back and attack Iran again, because Iran's in, all these protests, which were probably brought on by the Mossad and the CIA, maybe other agencies, whatever. So you got like Iranian protesters running around with AKs and flamethrowers, like barbecuing, Iranian cops, and Trump out there saying, "Don't you dare hurt those protesters, or there's going to be hell to pay." So, in other words, the U.S. is trying to find a pretext into bombing Iran again, which they will. They'll always find a pretext for war. If you don't have a pretext, make one up. Do you remember the other Mark Carney, not the one that's running our country right now, but the other one that used to, if we can't get if Iran won't start the war, maybe we'll have to start it for them. Maybe, a submarine goes down and doesn't come back up, or a ship or something. So it's like, these people are so smug that they will say the quiet part out loud, whether they're on the left or on the right, right? They're psychopaths. They're pure evil. So the bottom line is this. Trump comes into office with the dumb idea of blanket tariffs, okay? People understood it as, okay, well, make America great again. We're going to pick an industry, say like the softwood lumber. Yeah, right now, Canadian softwood lumber is taking a massive fucking shit kicking. The problem we have is we have to retool pretty much our lumber industry for Europe now, because we've been in feet and inches because almost all our lumber went to the United States, but now we have to find new markets. Like, for example, Japan. We have lumber mills specifically in Canada that cater to Japan because they get the lumber in meters, decameters, centimeters, millimeters, right? I don't know if I said them all in the right order. Everything, if you can count 1 to 10, you understand the metric system. If you can't count 1 to 10, then you can't understand. Metric system is too hard. It's the easiest system in the world. Can you count from 1 to 10? If you count from 1 to 10, just look at it. Just look at a meter ruler and you'll see what I mean. It's the easiest system ever. It's not fractional. It's just count from 1 to 10. That's it. But there is a discrepancy in the sizes from metric to SAE standard or SAE imperial. There's different volumes, different lengths, different whatever. So we are pretty much have all every house here is built with 2x4s. You know, not 50 by 100. Like it's which are not exactly the same, right? And then the thing about that is that's going to take like 2 to 4 years to do, right? So Trump is basically hurting the industries in the States by cutting off the lumber because they're not. Yes, their mills are going to peak up a bit, but the thing is the reason why Canada is selling most of our lumber to the United States is because the United States can't produce enough lumber or good quality lumber for themselves. Canadian lumber is better. It's just better. It's the cold, hard winters make stronger trees. It's nature, you know. So that's going to take 2 to 4 years, but that doesn't mean people have to get unemployed in that time. It means we have to do stimulus and austerity. In other words, we have to embrace the Keynesian economic system in its entirety, right? So Mark Carney wants, to keep the jobs here. That's fine, and he is moving in that direction. I know there's imperfections. Again, the Canadian economy and the American economy being like two tumors grafted together, it's easy to pick out and cherry pick what's good and what's bad, right? There's lots of bad things that in Canada. We have the everything crisis going on. But if the Americans, for 1 second, especially all these 51st state people, think that the Americans are doing so much better, you need to look again. They're not doing better. Most metrics, they're not doing. There's some metrics that the Americans are doing better than us. But like Canada, for example, we're overtaxed like crazy here. But in the States, like they have almost no social programs, right? They have no unemployment insurance and stuff like that. So when you lose your job in the States, they just don't count you, right? So the unemployment in the States is god awful high. It's high here in Canada, but it's god awful high there. But however, the Canadian economy is growing. Problem is where's that growth? Is it just temporary foreign workers, trying to race that bubble? The Americans have ran out of runway with that one. Where okay, let's get in all these foreign workers and give them all the jobs to the point where now they have to fire the domestic population to give the jobs to the foreigners to keep the GDP numbers up, and that means lower wages. Just basically stripping the wealth from people. And that's the problem with the immigration bubble. It's well known. It's just they turned it into a political thing where rather than being commonsensical about it, it's about rebooted. We got to say it properly. They've turned it into if you don't let every third worlder come here and work for slave labor, then you're a racist bigot. That's the argument from the left. Doesn't matter. Like you can't appease the left. The left has gone full retard, right? But the right is not doing the right thing either. We're talking the mainstream parties, right? The people in the center kind of figured out a lot of it that, like neither party's for us. But the thing is that it just shows that like things like the lumber industry in Canada, we have to pivot. We have to, again, with the Canadian economy just bouncing along, we're not in recession like the Americans are. The Americans have basically put themselves into a recession, borderlining on a depression. It's just they can't say it out loud. And no, the GDP numbers are really great. That's all data centers. Like basically rather than build industry, they're just building data centers. And these data centers are not going to be the be all end all that people think they are. 92% of the growth in the States is coming from data centers, right? When those data centers are built, it's just debt, just more debt, more debt, more debt. Now, I'm not saying they shouldn't build any, but the thing is that's all those eggs in one basket. You know what I mean? when they need the manufacturing, and you got to build that. But you have to have a customer base to build this for. You know what I mean? So if you're going to be building like mega projects, which is fine, that's a great way to keep money in your country is mega projects, and the Americans do have quite a few mega projects going on. There's no doubt about that. But at some point, the stimulus has to give way to austerity. You know what I mean? Okay, stimulate the economy to keep people working, but balance your budget. Trump has made no real attempts. The closest you got was the Doge thing, and they gave up on that. And all the money that you would have saved on that actually created more debt in the long run anyway, just through the unemployment, right? But not only that, it was never designed. He wasn't serious about it. Elon Musk, love him, hate him, whatever. I don't trust the guy, but he was right. Like if we're going to be serious about balancing the budget, we actually have to do some real severe cuts. And the best place to start would have been foreign wars, cutting back the military abroad. You know what I mean? And again, Trump had that win. He could have just stepped out of the Ukrainian thing, no problem. Trump could have backed out of the UN, no problem. You'd save billions and billions and billions of dollars, like actual savings. He could have cut off all kinds of foreign aid. Just that alone would probably get you close to a balanced budget. The sooner your country balances its budget, the safer it's going to be. Canada, yes, we're way over budget. There's no doubt about that. But if things play out the way they're supposed to, within 10 years, we might have a balanced budget, which, okay, that's fine. As long as we don't get to the point where we can't even pay the debt. The Americans are getting to the point where they can't pay the debt. They can't pay the interest payments on, let alone the actual payments. They're getting to that point. We're not there yet in Canada. Our budget, $200 billion is going on to the payment of the debt, right? Now, what I don't know is what the actual debt payment is. So are we paying just enough? And, we'll know probably within 2 years, okay, our debt's going up or it's coming down, right? So if we're paying down the debt, even if we're over budget and we're doing austerity, which, yes, Carney is doing a little, like that much austerity. Enough to, again, liberals freak out if you take away one government job, but it's like, okay, we got it. Like right now, our population is shrinking. This is something Canada has wanted, Canadians want. The temporary foreign workers program is, most Canadians don't want that. The foreigners want it, but the Canadians don't want it. And Carney, he can't just reverse on a dime because of his base, right? So there's a lot of things he's doing wrong, but there is things that he's sneakily doing in our favor. It's going to take forever. So what does 10 years of losing, say, 78,000 people, population shrinking by 78,000 people? Well, that's almost 1 million people, shrinking by 1 million people per decade, which, okay, is still not fast enough. We need to send most of these refugees home that are not real refugees, and we have to go after the scandals and stuff like that, especially these housing scandals, and the student thing. So there is, again, they need to go at it more aggressively, but at least they're stepping in the right direction, even if, like what the liberals are trying to do is not do the right thing per se, but they're trying to save their own ass. That's what they're doing. Again, don't ever think Mark Carney cares about Canadians. Don't ever think Trump cares about Americans. That should be fucking obvious by now. And Trump cares about Israel and only Israel. That's it. He's Israel's guy. I've been saying that since his second half of his first term. So we're getting slight wins in Canada, some of them accidental, like, for example, our wine and spirits and ale and beer industries are just booming here because of all the, while the Americans are losing, they're losing business because they lost, like, the most alcohol consuming country in the world per capita is us. We drink more than anybody else. I don't know why. I'm not bragging about that. I'm just saying it is. So if you're a brewery, if there's a freaking country that you're exporting to that you do not want to lose their clientele, it's Canada, right? Like it's like, no, there are a bunch of alkies up there, man. Maybe it's a good thing, I don't know. But our wine industry is a record year. Our tourism industry, record year. Lumber industry is getting hit. The canola industry got hit. Obviously, the steel and metal and aluminum have gotten hit pretty hard. But once those new trade deals start really kicking in within the next year or so, although that 1,000 jobs that were lost here in Quebec in the aluminum industry, that everybody, oh, see, Carney's failing, Carney's failing. Well, we're probably going to create 10,000 jobs just trying to supply the EU with and NATO with all the metals and everything that we're going to do. This is why Trump wants to steal Canada. He wants it for our resources. He doesn't want it for the people. Like, Trump's master plan, I think, is a couple fold. Okay. And the first part is the obvious. Okay. Trump started the trade war with Canada with the idea that he could just flick a switch and shut off the Canadian economy. We would just fold and be so scared. That's it. We wouldn't fight back. We would just basically hand over the keys and do whatever they wanted because whatever. But then Trudeau, 10 years of fucking up like crazy. I'm not giving the man any. I hate this man with a passion. He is the biggest treasonous, the second largest criminal politician that we've had in Canada, or possibly, well, definitely the second. The number one is Jean Chrétien. He ripped off. Well, no, I think Trudeau's the third. It goes Jean Chrétien ripped us off the most, and he's still walking free. Then Paul Martin, then Justin Trudeau. But Justin Trudeau was the worst politician Canada's ever had, just by the numbers. He printed more money in 10 years than we did in the past 240. You know what I mean? He doubled our debt. It's unbelievable. Now Carney, he's not starting off good because he printed $500 billion just to stimulate the Canadian economy, right? So not good. But he's creating industry, and Carney is an industry guy. Yes, he's pandering to his portfolios. Look, Trump and Carney are invested in the same guys. At the end of the day, they all work for the bankers, right? And Carney was a banker. But the difference is Carney's a smarter guy than Trump by probably double. Carney's a much longer, just by his actions, he's a longer thinker. It's not a reigning endorsement. It's just he knows that, okay, we're going to take a lot of lumps in, again, in the short run, but in 10 years, we're completely dependent on the United States. And this is the language he's using. If you judge Carney by the language is fairly correct. Where Carney loses most people is with the stupid liberal stuff, like the gun grab, mass immigration. Okay, well, we got to get that under wraps. So he takes like 2 steps forward, 1 step back kind of thing, and it is what it is. He's 10,000 times better than Justin Trudeau, but a doorknob would be better than Justin Trudeau. And I know a lot of my subscribers don't like me giving Carney any praise whatsoever because Carney bad. But I'm like, okay, you got to kind of look at it. Okay, guys, like I say, the only way out of this mess is through. And this is a world economic disaster that we're in. We're not going into it. We're in it. We've been in it since 2008, but now we're getting to the choke point where we got to go through. And the only way out is through. And it's going to be brimstone and fire. It's going to be hell. Most people are going to die from either starvation, poverty, or death of despair. Drinking themselves to death, offing themselves to death. This is what happens in these times. You need to prepare mentally, physically. If there was a time to kick drugs, including freaking marijuana, no, that is not a good drug. Yes, it is addictive. Yes, it does trigger mental health issues. It's very obvious to see. If you are a smoker, now's the time to quit. Now's when it's easy. If you're a drinker, now's the time to quit. Now's when it's easy. What happens when people get a bit stressed? They automatically go for the most destructive, self-destructive things, drugs, alcohol, whatever. Look, you just have to make peace with the idea and come up with a contingency plan when you lose your home, when you lose your job, when you lose this, when you can't pay for that, when you are hungry, what are you going to do? You know what I mean? You got to start thinking about that now, because I don't care how comfortable you are now. The comfort levels are going away for most people. The private sector is taking the hits first. The public sector will collapse overnight after. So Trump comes in with these tariffs, with people with the understanding that the tariffs were going to be targeted so that you could get an industry up and going in the States, and you do it the way you normally do it, right? Most people, whether in Canada or the United States, could understand this. Like, okay, well, we don't want a tariff war, but if you're trying to build your things, well, maybe we can find a way to cooperate on this, both sides. And Trump could have done this rather than his stupid real estate hostile takeover mentality that he has, where I win, you lose, that's a win. No, if you don't both have mutual benefit in your trade, you both lose. It's that simple. One-sided trade does not work. Can't work, never did work, never will work. That's not capitalism, that's just stupidity. The Chinese understand this very well. And trust me, I'm no fan of the Chinese regime, but they know how to do fucking business. Where America blows up bridges, the Chinese build bridges. This is why they were in Venezuela. This is why they were doing, all this business with Venezuela and stuff like that. And all those, Maduro was a tyrant. That's why we had to remove him. Well, okay, when do you go after Netanyahu? Because if you're going to judge Netanyahu versus Maduro, I'm not saying Maduro is a good guy, but Netanyahu has killed 100,000 people, him and his administration, using U.S. bombs to kill 100,000 people, displace about 2 million, create a freaking refugee crisis all throughout Europe, Canada, and the United States. When you go level Israel, I mean, at this point, you should be just nuking Israel. The United States should just be taken off for crimes. We have to nuke Israel for crimes against humanity. For the women, and we have to nuke them to save the women and children, right? No, you're never going to get that, right? No, it's double down. So this idea that you're going after Maduro because he's a tyrant. Well, all of, pretty much, with the exception of maybe possibly 3 guys in South America, maybe 4, they're all like, I keep calling him Salvini. It's not Salvini, but the guy in El Salvador. He's really turned around his country. Now, is he clean? I don't think so. I think, the guy probably just, backs different cartels or whatever. They're all in on it. Javier Milei, 50-50. Again, I still don't know if he's the good guy or the bad guy. We'll have to see how it plays out down there with what he's done. Chances are, new boss, same as the old boss. Anybody that's addicted to Israel seems to be the bad guy. It just is what it is. It just is what it is. But we'll see. Maduro, okay, he didn't have a Rothschild central bank in Venezuela, and we know what happens to countries that don't have Rothschild banks. They get democracy JDAM. He was selling the oil outside the petrodollar. That's what Saddam did. That's what Gaddafi did. That's why they got overthrown. He wasn't pandering to the LGBTQ stuff. He had a Christian thing. Abortion was banned. So it was a very right-wing thing. Now, Venezuelans who are for and against Maduro, it's like a 50-50 mix. I mean, look, the United States is about to start its actual civil war because it's so insolvent. There's no voting your way out of this at this point. It is going to come to a head. The radical left are killing people left, right, and center. The law enforcement, military allow it to happen. The government's allowing it to happen. Not doing anything about it. So yes, you have no rule of law. And Trump has now just showed that there's no international rule of law. And the thing about that, this is where the dangers really lie, is because with the U.S. pirate Navy, these are not honorable sailors. These are just a bunch of jackboot thugs on boats. They're pirates. The U.S. Navy is now pirates. You come up with a law in your country saying that we are going to decide if this country over here, who's a sovereign nation, which this is a hypocrisy of the libertarians, that, we got rid of Maduro. Okay, nobody sad that Maduro's gone. Well, you should be outraged that they kidnapped this guy and his wife. who got a nice shiner. I don't know, did they hit her with a rifle butt or bitch slap her or whatever? There she is with a big fucking black-eyed pork chop shiner there. Wonder what happened there. No, you should be outraged by that because that means there's no rules-based order, right? It's just the might makes right. And this is what Trump has signaled to the world. You can do whatever you want if you can pull it off. Might makes right. Well, that has a horrible history of backfiring on people. The United States is about to go to war. They're already at a war with over 100 and some odd, 145 countries economically with this stupid Trump tariff war, which is completely devastating the U.S. economy. It's making everything so much more expensive for everybody without the benefit of actually building any industry. Where are all these businesses, the 90 deals in 90 days? Where are all these companies coming in and building all these factories for the United States? They're nowhere. Why? Because Trump doesn't know how to do business. He's horrible at doing business. Good real estate guy, but horrible at doing business. We'll put it to you so simply. You tell somebody, I'm going to tariff you, okay? And in retaliation, you're going to open up a bit. I'm going to give you a good tax break. Okay, I'm going to threaten to invade your country. I'm going to threaten to invade about 20 countries in the world, including the number one ally, which is Canada, and Greenland, which, why the fuck would anybody pick on Greenland? You know what I mean? Oh, we need it for national security, so we're just going to take it. We might do it militarily. And the people that can't see the problem with that, I'm like, I don't care if they're on the left or on the right. I'm like, if the shoe was on the other foot and somebody was threatening to invade your country to steal its resources, and you're not going to say something about that? Of course the Greenlanders are not for it. The Greenlanders are trying to find a quiet way out of this mess by the Nordic Alliance, which is now a thing. It is becoming a thing. Finland, Canada are probably going to take the brunt, and maybe Denmark are going to take the brunt of the fighting in the Arctic against the Americans. Never thought that would happen, but here we go. And the last people you want to fight in the Arctic is Canadians and Finns. Like, ask the Russians what it's like to fight the fucking Finns in the wintertime. They're real bastards, you know. Go Finland, go. Oh, by the way, that Finnish show, Conflict. Yeah, okay, I get it's propaganda, whatever, but it's a good show. Good show. Hard to follow. People speaking Finnish, people speaking Russian, people speaking English. It's like the show's a bit all over the place, but I enjoyed it. I watched it. I enjoyed it. You know, it's like, okay, it's a, you know, I know it's got an anti-Russian theme to it, but again, I digress. You're not going to take the Nordic Alliance, including Canada, in the Arctic. The Americans are not set up to fight in the Arctic like us Canadians. Canadians and Finns have the best like our equipment operates at minus 50. The American stuff, they have very little equipment that can operate in the minus 30 to minus 50. The Americans are designed for a desert war. They're good at that. They figured that out. They're good in open country. They're good in moderate climate. They're even okay in jungle. But when it comes to the Arctic, like the Finns sum it up the best. The Arctic, your number one enemy is not your opponent. Your number one enemy is Mother Nature. And the thing is that I started looking at where all the bases are in Greenland and stuff like that. I'm like, okay, what Trump is talking about, and I speculated he was going to do this, but he's already talking about it, is that they're going to increase, like I think there's a couple hundred Americans there right now, and I'm not sure how these Americans are getting treated in the Finnish towns. I know in the early 50s or whatever, when they started making the deal, that they were Denmark was very clear that the Americans were very limited. They couldn't just willy-nilly travel through the Finnish through the Greenland towns because they didn't want American influence destroying the culture, right? So they could go to a restaurant, they could go here, go there. I don't know if it's like that now, but what I'm thinking is I can't see how, like being a U.S. soldier walking through Greenland, like how the people are treating you right now. Like, it'd be interesting to know. Some people can separate politics, but you have to understand the Greenland people are completely against. Well, maybe not completely I'm sure you can find a handful of Greenlanders that want to join the United States. But Trump, if he was really serious about winning, threats weren't the way to go. All he had to do was like, look, Iceland and Canada did the same thing, but we respectfully declined Iceland. Iceland said, "Hey, Canada, can we use your currency? Be kind of like a, kind of the way the Kingdom of Denmark is with Greenland. Iceland wanted to do the same thing with us. We said, no, you guys are too special. Keep your own currency. Do that. Turks and Caicos down, like, guys, if we ever want a tropic island for Canada, Turks and Caicos have been begging us to annex them. Like, it's like 99% of people in Turks and Caicos want us to freaking annex them. They're like, can you just take us now? Like, we'll even make the invasion like really easy. We've already surrendered. Why? Because they love us. And it's like, okay, no, well, we just can't take on that economic debt and stuff like that. So that's a good thing. The Greenland Canada War that Justin Trudeau fucked up when it ended. It was a 50-year war, and it was the best war in human history. It was called the Whiskey Wars. If you don't know about it, but basically there was an island disputed between Greenland and Canada, and basically our warships would go there, plant our flag, leave a bottle of Canadian Club for them. They would come pull out our flag, put their flag, and leave us a bottle of whiskey. And this went on for years, right? And finally, Trudeau, I'm like, it was the best PR between two countries you could ever get. Like, it's the funnest rivalry ever, and Trudeau ruins it. I hate that, man. like that just bugs me. That just bugs me, right? But the thing is no, Canada is, but the Americans have the troop numbers, but they don't have the equipment. Canada has probably the most equipment. We have the second largest. You hear Trump go on about like Canada not pulling its weight in the Arctic, and I'm like, what the fuck is this shitbag talking about? It's like, okay, America has 2 fully functional icebreakers and 5 total. Canada has 19 and building new ones. And yes, the Russians have some new icebreakers, but most of their icebreakers are really old. They have the most. They have 40. I think China has 1 or 2 because they're a near Arctic nation. No, they're not. They're not even fucking close. They're fucking 5,000 miles away. What are they talking about? Well, maybe not 5,000 miles, but they're at least 2,000 miles away from the Arctic. Yeah. But yeah, the Finns, they have 8 or 9. The Swedes have a bunch. And again, like when Trump goes on about the icebreaker thing, oh, we're building, I'm approving icebreaker. This program has been going since the 90s, okay? Trump will take credit for anything that was already previously in the works. And people are taking that as the wins. And the thing is, what you need to understand is that they're not the wins. These things were already in the works. They predate Trump. They predate fucking Bill Clinton. You know what I mean? Some of these things. Some of this goes back to Bush Jr., whatever. And it's just coming to fruition now. So Trump takes the win. It's like the big deal with Toyota. Well, that was already in the works under Biden and Obama. And Trump won. You know what I mean? So, no, Trump is trying to find a win for himself because he's too much of an egomaniac to say, look, I fucked up, or even find a way to weasel himself out of this trade dispute stuff. The idea was to get enough tax money without raising taxes, and that's what it was really down to. It wasn't about bringing the manufacturing back. That was just a desperate hope. But what it was is to raise taxes to pay the bills. Didn't work. The money they're making is already spent. And then, of course, how much money did the Americans, taxpayer, who can't afford their health care and are still dealing with government shutdown shocks for, there's people can't get their medication, you know what I mean? Because of like fucking idiots like this. How much money was wasted going to get Maduro? And again, this perfect, U.S. ploy, blah, blah. The only reason why there's no dead U.S. soldiers or sailors is because it was an inside job. Like his own guys sold him out. Now that said, they probably like the air defense systems. Yeah, some of them got taken out because somebody ratted them out, but they weren't turned on. If they were turned on, you would see there's not a single helicopter would have made it. You know what I mean? Let alone most of the fixed wing aircraft. So the thing is that there was obviously an inside job, but they didn't really do regime change. That's the whole thing. The only guy that's missing is Maduro. The rest of his staff is still there, right? There are no real boots on the grounds taking care. And if you know where the oil is in Venezuela, that's way inside the jungle. You're going to put U.S. troops in there? How are you going to get them there without getting them killed? You're just going to fly them in? Well, that means you're going to have to build a landing strip. Millions and millions of dollars. It's going to take years. The U.S. oil, Trump was probably thinking about this way. I'm going to cut off Alberta and Saskatchewan with cutting off by stealing the potash and the oil reserves from Venezuela. Okay, and we'll make money off that and pay off our debt. Right? It's a quick get-rich scheme. Not realizing that, when Trump's out there saying, oh yeah, all the oil companies that are going to go in and do all this. Well, the companies aren't stepping forward. They're like, no, Venezuela still owes us money. Like, we're not going to go and invest more money when they still owe us, right? And we're not going to go in there because that's going to take 4 to 5 years to get their oil production up to par. So in other words, you gave Alberta 4 years to find new markets from the United States. So, BC, they've got to get this George Soros funded, US funded Tides Foundation, Bill Gates funded, fake native thing out of the way. We got to get that out of our country. That's standing in the way of progress, and let the real native groups in BC make a vote whether they want a pipeline or not. I think most natives will be on board with a pipeline going through to the coast. The second we get those pipelines to the coast, our oil's open to the world. The second we get the natural gas to the world, where we compete with the United States, we're tending to win because nobody wants, even if the United States can give you a better deal, nobody wants the instability. So Alberta has a bit of a saving grace, but they got to act fast. This is what I mean, like this idea that Alberta is going to become a part of the 51st state and prosper. No, you would be destroyed by the Americans. Do you think all these high-paid Albertan residents are going to keep their oil rig jobs? No, you're going to get H-1B'd like all the other places in the States, right? No, you're going to lose those jobs to migrants. And they're going to get, because they're like 1/10 the price of you, right? The corporate world does not want to pay living wages. That should be apparent now. This is why we can't just always pander to capitalism because it doesn't work. Capitalism works the best. You want as much free market capitalism as possible in your country, but you need checks and balances. And you can't let capitalism get the cheapest stuff from the lowest bidder for everyday low prices to drive down to everyday low wages where everybody's so working class, poor, and impoverished. That's what's happening in Canada. That's what's happening in the States. It's happening everywhere. Because, corporations are running our country because nothing's more important than GDP numbers and perpetual growth, which none of it is sustainable. I'd rather see negative GDP numbers for a little bit and see wages go up until it balances. And even if there's incremental growth, like Stephen Harper figured it out to a good degree, to the point where even though he ballooned the Canadian government, he still balanced his budget with the largest the Canadian government had ever been at the time, with very minimal austerity. The Conservatives did very minimal austerity. Of course, the Liberal people, oh my God, they're cutting everything. Yes, there is things that they do cut that I don't like. This is the problem with Conservatives. They cut all the social programs in the country to give money to other countries. That pisses me off. That's why I'm a nationalist, not a progressive conservative. But we don't have a nationalist government or party in Canada because, Nazis. No, we need nationalists. Look, a nationalist socialist government is a tainted term. I get that. But if you think about it in practice, okay, you get the wins on the right that you want, but you also get the wins on the left that you want. And you could still do globalism on top of that, just not at the expense of your citizenry, not at the expense of the wealth of the people, not at the behest of all these stakeholder capitalists and vulture capitalists and venture capitalists. Which, again, getting back to Venezuela, these people are not stepping up to say, oh, hey, you just overthrew the Venezuelan dictator? Okay, fine, we're going to go in and we're going to, do all this oil for you. It's the same thing like with Pierre Poilievre going on about, the anti-pipeline laws. There is no anti-pipeline laws. You got to meet a criteria, and most of the people that build the pipelines are saying it's not going to be profitable to do an east-west pipeline. Either the government's going to have to subsidize that because we're not going to make the money on it right away. So you can't get the private contractors to build it. That said, this is where Canada has to make the decision. Do we want to be giving $200 million to the Ukraine, keeping the war going, or do we want to build pipelines, and benefit our people? Do we want to give money to Israel and Saudi Arabia and Haiti and all those African countries, Mali and all that? Or do we want to say, okay, maybe we get out of that stuff and put it towards our people? Yes, I don't mean those people over there might suffer, but it's our people versus their people. Who do you want to take care of? Government is either or. You can have this or you can have that. Like the Americans have it even worse than us for foreign aid. You know what I mean? Like, and these are the things Trump was supposed to go after. But he won't go after Israel. Why? Because, no, we have to give more foreign aid to Israel. It's just ridiculous, right? Anyway, so Trump is in a situation where he's trying to find a win. So he's fucked up with the economy to a very disastrous, even to the point where the main cheerleaders of Trump are in concern, where they're like, again, it's a handful of people that are still believing in the Trump narrative. Oh, but Joe Biden was so much worse. At this point, no, he wasn't. Oh, Kamala Harris was so much worse. I don't know how she could be worse. Like, she would not be doing, number one, she wouldn't be smart enough to do to come up with a plan like that. Number two, I don't think she would be crazy enough to do that. She would wreck the country in other ways. There's no doubt about that. She's a horrible person. But the thing is that all these people are beholden to the same banksters. It's just whatever they keep convincing Trump to do. And the problem with Trump, again, it's the Stalin effect where everybody tells him what he wants to hear without critical thought. And as soon as they do, they get either fired or whatever. Again, in Stalin's case, he'd have him put up against the wall and shoot him because he told him no. Because Trump's ego is too fragile, right? The guy's a faggot. Like he's a total fucking faggot. Anyway, like when you realize that the third world, South America, the second world countries have to be run with men by iron fists, you'll understand why Maduro is Maduro, right? You'll understand why Saddam Hussein, probably the most scary world leader in the modern era in the past 100 years, probably between him and Mao, you know what I mean? And Stalin. These are the scariest men. Hitler didn't hold a candle to these guys in a lot of ways. No, Saddam Hussein was the scariest probably man I think that ever fucking existed. If you just watched how he ruled. But he was iron fist beyond iron fist. Like him, if you use X-Men, he didn't have an iron fist like Stalin. He had an adamantium fist. He kept his people in line. There was like almost no crime in Iraq whatsoever under Saddam. The last people you ever wanted to be rounded up by was the Republican Guard. And yeah. So I'm not giving a reigning endorsement to Saddam Hussein. What I'm saying is he was a strong man. He kept his people in check. Gaddafi was the same. And we overthrew these guys to create instability. So what's going to happen in Venezuela? Is it going to become more stable? No. You've already got explosions and shots fired, not really knowing what's going on. You have pro-Maduro protests, you have anti-Maduro protests, and they're about the same size each. So for every Venezuelan that hates Maduro and was begging, and again, I'm listening to Venezuelan people, they're like, no, we've been begging for this for 10 years, 20 years, whatever. Now the people are like, how dare you fucking steal our guy? It's all over the map. So the pro-Trump people are showing all these pro-Maduro, the people that wanted, pro-overthrowing of Maduro protests, but most of these are not. These are like soccer protest, celebrations, right? And a lot of it is AI. A lot of it is AI. So it's probably 50-50. Most of the people seem to be happy that he's gone, that you see in the protests. But on the other hand, their government is, and other governments in South America are saying, hey, no, we need to unite together because the Americans are coming for us next. So yes, the Cubans and the Venezuelans work together. Trump looks like he's going to make a dive for Cuba. Probably around the same time he's going to go after Iran. Total neocon wars. But the United States is about to go to a physical war with probably about 40 to 45 countries. The United States is going to get its ass kicked. We're the number one military in the world. Yeah, maybe 1-on-1. 2-on-1, you're going to have a hard time. 5-on-1 is going to be almost impossible. And 45-on-1, like having the entirety of South America, the entirety of the 90% of the Middle East against you, and the Nordic countries and Canada against you, you're fucked. You know what I mean? You're going to be isolated for sure. It'll first come in the forms of U.S. sanctions and counter naval piracy. The United States military, at some point, you're going to see navies around the world, maybe third world navies first, escorting their tankers and whatever, and going toe-to-toe with the U.S. The U.S. will probably have the upper hand at first, but the U.S. Navy's not as big as people think. It's a lot of personnel, but there's only like 240 ships. It's the largest Navy out there. But one good Russian heavy torpedo, or God forbid you go up against the F-21 torpedoes, the French-made torpedoes, or the Torpedo 2000, which is a modified Mark 48s, good luck with that. Good luck with that. You're going to lose a lot of sailors. Now, the thing is those are the people just following orders in the pirate navy, so I'm not going to feel bad for these guys if they're going to keep doing all this terrorism around the world. Oh, well, yeah, but there was Hezbollah on the ship. There are drug dealers. They're all... Okay. First off, the answer is no. We don't know. Who got killed in those speedboats? We don't know. Give me one name. Give me one drug dealer's name in those speedboats. What drugs were in those boats? We don't know. Oh, but there's probably a 90% chance that they were. Right? But when you just blow things out of the water, and when the guys are clinging to life on the wreckage, and you go back and you shoot these men in water, that's a pirate navy. That is treason on the high sea. The U.S. Navy is a treasonous navy. Chasing people's freighters down because you decided in your country that country cannot do trade outside our currency. That country, because that goes against American exceptionalism. That country goes against our interest. Okay, it's in our hemisphere. Yeah, but it's still a sovereign country. It doesn't matter if it's in your hemisphere. So if you thought the war in Iraq was bad, just wait till you see the disaster of the Don Roe doctrine of the hemisphere. It's not about protecting the United States. It's about protecting the petrodollar. Anglo-American Empire versus Eurasian Pacific Empire. If you wanted to force people into the BRICS nations, that's how you do it. Trump is in a desperate situation. He has no wins. He's losing his base big time. Even Joe Biden lost a lot of his base to record numbers, to the point that many Democrats voted in record numbers for Donald Trump because they were resonating. Donald Trump's message was resonating. Okay? And then bang, he just completely throws them under the bus. Throws all his people under the bus. Which is going to create the communist backlash that is coming. And it's going to be hell. They're going to censor. They're going to throw people in jail. And all those Americans that, look at the UK with Starmer throwing people in jail. Well, what do you think is about to happen in the United States when in 2028? Now, if we believe Steve Bannon says Trump's going to be reelected in 2028, but that's not constitutionally possible. So what do they know that we don't? Well, that means there's probably either going to be so much martial law that they can't. I think what Trump is going to have to do is pull a Zelensky, just suspend the elections altogether, right? Which is going to create civil war, like actual civil war, which will benefit the Chinese long term. The idea, like I've been saying since 2010, is for the globalists to have the pivot to Asia. China, George Soros said it out, the Rothschild bankers, they've been saying it for years, that China is going to be the world dominant for the manufacturing, and we're going to pivot to Asia, right? This is what the BRICS nations and all that stuff were about at first. It's to go around the petrodollar, right? Because the world leaders are Maoists at heart. They love the Chinese social credit score authoritarian system, and they want it everywhere. All that technology goes to China first so that they could, trial balloon it, right? So the best way to take down the United States is by basically from within. Have about 50 secession movements, or as many as possible, to break the country up into 50 independent little nation-state countries, and then China can buy them out over the next 100 years. That's looking what the plan is. First, divide and conquer, whatever. The Americans are so polarized at this point, especially with this American woman being killed by ICE. If there was ever bad PR, there you go. Which is going to counter when the Democrats get in, they're going to open the flood borders to probably about 100 million people per year. It's the end of the United States. Donald Trump had a chance to fix this if he would have went about it the right way. But he keeps going about it the wrong way. So that said, he's looking for a win. This is the worst part of it. He's looking for a win. So we sanctioned Venezuela and then complained that they weren't selling enough oil. But because, and then they were selling oil that they sanctioned, okay? Well, there's no reason why Venezuela, whether you again, if you're all against Maduro, why aren't we taking out Kim Jong-un and Netanyahu? You know what I mean? You know what I mean? Let's be consistent if you're going to turn into a fucking neocon. What happened to all these MAGA, make America great non-interventionists, and suddenly they're okay with Maduro. But Maduro was a bad guy. There's bad guys all over the place. How about we just fucking stay out of it? You know what I mean? And who are the Americans to decide who the Venezuelans can sell their oil to and in what denomination? You know what I mean? This is the very reason why Trump got elected, was to get out of that shit. You know what I mean? Out of this nation building stuff, because it's never nation building. The Americans have never built up another nation other than Israel, of course. They've destroyed nation after nation. This will be the 49th government that they've attempted to overthrow. But basically, the Maduro government is still there, just without Maduro and his wife. That's it. And the Venezuelan military, they're getting ready and gearing up. Look, they got taken out the first time by traitors. I can imagine they're going to track down, these loyalists are going to track down. There's probably way more Maduro loyalists in the military than not. And even if they're not loyalists to Maduro, they just might be fuck America. You know what I mean? Like, how dare you steal our guy? Even if we didn't like him, he's our guy. You had, remember the ambassador to Canada all outraged about Canada putting out commercials that upset Trump, and then Trump calls off a trade deal because he's a faggot and he's butthurt. Going, that was messing with American elections, blah, blah, blah. And now apparently it was the Maduro government that was messing with the American elections, right? Then they go and steal a guy from another country. And is that not election meddling? You kidnapped their leader. You are now the U.S. government is now a human trafficker. You can't even make this up. It's crazy. But I guess what Trump thought, because Trump has these weird neocon ideas that if I'm the strong man that just goes and flattens Maduro, but don't really flatten the country. Mind you, they killed about 100 people in this raid. Some of them might have been Cubans, so the Cubans are obviously right now, the Cubans and the Chileans and all them, and I forget the other countries that he threatened. Trump's threatened so many countries. But these people are like, okay, we need to take our defense seriously. Maduro probably never thought this was going to happen. Just, okay, well, they're just going to float the ships out, But you're about to see a Bay of Pigs 2.0, because I don't think the second one, the Venezuelans are going to shoot back on the second one. There's no doubt about that. You're going to lose a lot of Americans. And people say, how dare they kill our soldiers and our sailors? Well, you're fucking attacking them. You know what I mean? You can't get mad at, all these Americans that are for like self-defense and stuff like that, and then get mad at these countries when they fight back. It's like it doesn't matter if you like those people in that country or if you think their leaders dictate. The Americans killed 1.5 million Iraqis over weapons of mass destruction line. Not a single American uh, member of the administration went to jail for that, or like those people should be executed for crimes against humanity. There is no rule of law. Trump just showed there's no rule of law. He didn't even have the mandate to go to war, which you can say, well, it wasn't a war. It was a limited strike, special military operations. I guess he's trying to pull the Putin thing. But no, it was an act of war. When you kidnap a leader from another country, that is an act of war, period. So now you've got the U.S. Navy is caught up to this Russian freighter, which apparently was empty. I don't think it's empty. I think what it is, and this is what I called last year, guys, that we're heading for the Cuban Missile Crisis 2.0. I believe there's going to be nuclear weapons in South America aimed at the United States because of the stupidity of the United States government, right? And it's not all on Trump. It's the people he's surrounded by, which are mostly dual citizenship Israelis, right? They run the U.S. government. This is openly admitted. It's impossible not to track. To think that these people have loyalty to the United States is, I got a bridge to sell you. Call me racist, bigot, anti-Semite if you want, but I think most people can figure it out. Heck, especially when it's openly admitted. You know what I mean? By them, then they gaslight you when you requote them. You know what I mean? It's like, but you said you were running it. What a world! But are you not entertained? Are you not entertained? Crazy, just absolute madness. You can always sit back and laugh at the chaos of it all. But I do believe like there's Russian submarines that are now tracking the U.S. Navy with these so-called ghost freighters, right? I do believe, yes, they are probably running weapons in these. What I'm thinking is they probably got an air defense system or some sort of an anti-shipping system or whatever that the Russians have turned this freighter back, to get it home. But what I'm thinking is the Americans are like, well, if we capture that ship at sea and it's got an S-300 on it, we could figure out how to beat the S-300. So I think that's probably what's going on, or something like that. Because why would you spend all that money to trace down an empty freighter? You know what I mean? Like not like we're not talking. They didn't trace down this thing in the Gulf of Mexico or off the coast of Venezuela. They chased this thing to the fucking Baltic Sea. Venezuela here. Russia here. U.S. here. They caught the freighter here. Yeah, you don't spend that much money chasing down at high speed for like over 2 weeks to catch an empty freighter. You don't waste that much money. So I think what we're about to see is the U.S. pirate navy, and we have to call it that because that's what it is. You are stealing oil from another country, which it's backfired because the Venezuelans, their oil industry is kind of dilapidated. So when Trump was thinking, okay, here's how we can fucking collapse Canada, we'll collapse Alberta, which Alberta has a lot of debt issues right now, and it's getting worse it's getting out of control under Danielle Smith, even more than what it was under Rachel Notley, which she was just absolutely horrible. Now, that said, I still have respect for Danielle Smith. I think she's a good leader. I think she is a very good people person. I think she's good at relations and business and stuff like that. But again, from 2020, like she's trying to deal with a lot of problems in her province. With the Alberta, the new Alberta, make Alberta great again thing that she's trying to do, while trying to hold off, recession movements or secession movements and stuff like that. So she's got a lot on her plate, but she's also got a lot of debt. Alberta is racking up a lot of debt, right, because of other issues. You can go if you're an Albertan, just go look into it for yourself. Look, Alberta. I think it was Ralph Klein was. He was like in there for like 20 years or whatever. He kept getting reelected. They had like no debt. Like Alberta was the only province with like zero debt, right? But they didn't have a lot of government services. Now, almost all our government services are geared towards newcomers, aka immigrants, right? And it's costing us way too much, and it's across the country. Rachel Notley brought in a lot of that over there too. So now they're finding out that they can't keep up with it. You can't just keep giving welfare to all these people coming in. So everybody, like Quebec is trying to do this. Alberta's trying to do this. I think a few other provinces are trying to say, okay, look, we're going to go against the federal government on the immigration thing. Like we're just taking on way more people than we can handle. And it's true. We don't need a single immigrant. Oh, well, but all these educated people that we got to bring, we're not bringing in the educated people, number one. And number two, we can educate our own people. Unlike Donald Trump, I don't believe that our people are so stupid that they can't be educated like they used to be. It just might take a couple of years. If you put your new doctors in the school now, yes, it'll be 8 to 10 years before you see them. But you will see them if we invest that way. It's just there might be a little bit of a slump. But everybody's in this. We have to have it now. And this is a big problem we have in Canada. We can't develop our own interests. Oh, it costs too much. We can't. It's not going to be ready for 4 to 10 years. Well, yeah, but in 4 to 10 years, the problem is solved. So to those people, it's like, okay, you got to break an egg to make an omelet. And we have to do it now. We have no choice. The United States is hostile to Canada. They consider us an enemy state. This is their official government status on Canada is a potential enemy state. I know a lot of people don't want to believe it, but it's true. I mean, Trump going on about Greenland, like, what is he thinking? Again, maybe he's just hanging around the Israelis too long. Like, how do we make people hate us the most? Just keep doing what you're doing. Like, you know what I mean? It's crazy. It's insane. So Trump thinks he's going to get this PR win of, getting rid of a bad guy in the world, right? And on top of that, we're going to make all this money off the oil, and then we'll be able to knock out Alberta's oil thing because they won't be able to compete with us. We won't need them anymore. We can cut them off, and that'll collapse Alberta, and then the Albertans and the rest of Canadians say, well, make us the 51st state. And it's having the total opposite effect. Canadians have never been more patriotic. I know the elbows up thing is cringe. I get that. But it will lead to Maple Leaf Up, which is a World War I Canadian. At that point, our country's saved, and anybody who wants to fuck with us, you're going to get a trench club in the side of the head. You know what I mean? I can't wait. I want to see that type of patriotic Canadian again. But a lot has to happen. And again, we're going to do a lot more pain and suffering. I'm not saying the Canadian economy is perfect by any, but it's moving in the right direction. The American economy is not moving in the right direction. Hence, Trump thinks that the MAGA base is going to respond to overthrowing Maduro, and then he thinks that he's going to get this big oil win, and all the oil companies are going to go in there and develop it, but the oil companies aren't stepping forward. Why not? Because maybe some of the smaller ones will be there, but even if they do, you're looking at 4 to 5 years before you could ever get any sort of benefit out of the Venezuelan oil, at best. While the United States is in a major decline. There's some industries that are doing good. The war machine always does good, because that's where your stimulus is going. Paul Craig Roberts, I think, summed it up very well, that America always needs an enemy, Israel and America. And the reason why the U.S. policy follows the Israeli policy is the idea is so that America and Israel always have an enemy to fight so that they can keep the weapons industry going. But it's going to collapse. Now, when other nations decide to basically escort their tankers with corvettes and destroyers and what have you, or submarines, the U.S. is probably going to destroy a couple of, warships, foreign warships, and then you're going to get again, you have the fuck Trump economy going on globally, where a lot of people are trying to get their countries weaned off the United States as much as possible. And this is going to be a big, big catapulting forward of that fuck Trump economy. So you're about to see probably in the next 4 months a big decline in U.S. exports to other countries where people are just not going to buy U.S. products. I mean, they're still going to have whatever, but we're talking, probably just from what Trump has done in Venezuela, it's probably going to cost probably 100,000 jobs in the next 4 or 5 years of just lost business of people saying, I'm not going to support that regime, especially with a pirate navy. The United States is going to decline for the next 30 to 40 years. It's going to be brutal. Now, when the Battle of the Atlantic 2.0 takes place, the U.S. Navy is going to come out on top at first, but you're going to see probably mutinies at sea where when they're, like say it's a Venezuelan corvette or something like that, escorting, they sink the corvette, and then the freighters themselves have guys that are armed on it. So you're going to see like a Black Hawk helicopter coming in with their SEAL team coming in. A guy's going to come out with an RPG and just blow the helicopter out of the sky, kill all that crew. U.S. warship's going to sink that freighter. They're going to kill about 20, 30 men on the high seas, right? Donald Trump could say, well, they attacked us. Or were they defending themselves? The world's going to see it as, no, this was a fucking oil freighter. This is a merchant marine trying to defend themselves from a pirate navy. The world's going to see that. There will be sanctions right away. There'll be outrage, obviously, everywhere. The MAGA people that are still on board and the neocons will be like, oh, well, these guys are the bad guys because they shouldn't have shot our guys out of the sky in the first place. They should have just let us take their billions, a couple of $1 billion worth of oil off them. Basically, that's what the U.S. Navy is doing, is just stealing oil, right? But it's to fight the Russians and the Chinese, sure. But you're still stealing, You know what I mean? Like, you might not like this, but the Venezuelans can sell the oil in whatever dollar denomination they want. And if we have to kill everybody that goes against the petrodollar, at what point do you get that, people saying, you know what? And I think it's going to obviously start with Iran. But you're going to see nations say, you know what? When the U.S., our navies are going to start to patrol the seas in conjunction. Now, when you see Western navies, coming in up against the U.S. Navy, that's going to be a real shock to the system. It will be like NATO's done for, which I'm all for getting rid of NATO. The Europeans can have the European alliance. I love the idea of Canada having the Nordic. I'm all for NORAD, but we can't trust the Americans anymore, so we have to get rid of it and go it alone. Because the Americans are going to attack us at some point, right? So it's not a fully done deal. I don't know if it's going to happen this year. Again, the places to watch is the Americans are going to make a move in the Northwest Passage. It's where the Chinese want to go. It's where the Russians want to go, or around the Great Lakes are the two most spots where Trump wants to attack. These are his words, So at what point do you see Chile start sending submarines, their submarines, and, again, I don't know how many submarines the Venezuelans have if they have some old Kylo subs, but I can imagine the Russians might, train them up, say, hey, look, even if you lose the Kylo sub and its crew, if you could take out a U.S. aircraft carrier, your nation's much safer. And there's only 14 of them to take out. You know what I mean? Like, that's the thing. Once you take out the U.S. aircraft carriers, the U.S. Navy is pretty much done for. Again, you're about to see a lot of probably merchant marine. It's not going to be like the Atlantic convoys of World War II, but like smaller versions of that, where it's like there's 4 corvettes, in a corridor in the shipping. The shipping lanes are just going to be full of. You're going to see like German subs, you're going to see Nordic subs, the Swedes, whatever. They're going to patrol their area, right? Canada, whatever. It's just like, okay, well, we got to make sure the freighters aren't attacked by the U.S. Oh, but the U.S. is only attacking these guys. Yeah, but they're not. They're attacking Iranian ships. They're attacking the Venezuelans. They're going to be attacking Cuban ships. They are attacking Cuban ships. Russian ships. Chinese ships. You're not catching the pattern here. The U.S. pirate navy is basically going around stealing people's resources on the high seas and using the justification of the Monroe Doctrine and hemispherical influence, which I'm not saying there's no merit to it, but there's a right way to go about it and a wrong way. You can't just steal merchants from people, right? And you can't just say, well, because you're in our sphere of influence, this country, like, the difference between China and Russia is, China and the United States is, again, I can't stress enough, but it really does come down to where the Americans blow up bridges, the Chinese make it. Like, the Chinese go into an area, they build infrastructure that the U.S. usually blows up. They don't get involved with the internal politics of that country. They just make money and get influence. And that's why the Chinese are where they're at. You know what I mean? They're not perfect. Don't get me wrong. I don't want China running the world. And when the United States collapses, so does China. They're like Siamese twins. Like China, unfortunately, their number one customer is the United States. Trust me, I can sympathize. Our number one customer is the United States, and they hate us. You know what I mean? It's a bad position to be in. I'm not saying all the American people, but I'm saying like 80% of the American people love Canadians. 80% of Canadians love Americans. And there's probably 10% that are indifferent, and then that other 10% that, they're retarded, right? The problem is the part that hates us is in power. Like, Joe Biden was no real friend to Canada, but he was indifferent to us. He didn't care about us. We'll do some trade disputes, whatever. But whatever. Canada's just Canada. We'll just keep doing the trade the way we're doing. And Joe Biden, again, you heard me critique Joe Biden all the time, but he never did what Trump did. He didn't threaten to annex us. He didn't threaten to move the border. He didn't threaten to steal our resources. He didn't threaten all these countries. It's just, and the fact that there's Americans that can't figure out why people around the world are mad at them. Like, are you really that thick? It's all these neocon type. Like, I don't understand. It's like George Bush. Well, they hate us because of our freedoms. No, they hate you because you're fucking bombing them. They hate you because you're fucking stealing their fucking resources and kidnapping their leaders. That's why they hate you. And you're bombing their countries. That's why they hate you. Like, if you can't fucking figure that out, when it starts happening in your country, you're gonna understand. Again, it's going to be a weird day when you see fucking U.S. cities being bombed out by allied nations. It's going to be a weird thing. I don't want to see that, but that's what's going to happen. No, the United States can't fend off the world. Its military is not big enough, and the country's too divided to get the conscripts. Right now, Canadian recruitment is on the up under Carney. It was down under Trudeau, but it's going up under Carney, and a lot of that has to probably do with the Trump effect, but threatening our country. Our military is growing. Our Arctic presence is growing. We're the number one in the Arctic. It's Canada. It's not the United States. It's Canada. Their numbers are larger in Alaska for the Americans, but when it comes to patrolling the Arctic, it's Canada. Again, we have specific built Arctic warships and patrol boats that, again, the Americans don't have this stuff. The Americans train on our ships, not the other way around. So when you hear Trump going on about, we're paying for the Canadian military, no, you're not. Americans had the best deal since the fall of the Avro Arrow. Canada agreed not to develop its weapons industry and favor American products. And for every $1 we spent on our military, 70 to 80 cents of that went to the Americans. Now that's not happening under Carney, right? And it's like, well, why can't Carney make a deal with Trump? You can't make a deal with Trump. There's no deal to be made. He doesn't want a deal. Trump wants to take over Canada, steal the resources. The same way he wants to steal the resources from Greenland. The same way he's stealing the resources from Venezuela. Look, this goes back to Zbigniew Brzezinski and the Grand Chessboard. We'll rape Afghanistan and Iraq and stuff like that from its resources. And did it work? No. The nation building stuff, neocon, Henry Kissinger stuff, New American Century stuff never worked. It never did. It never will. It's never been about nation building. It's not about. And again, all these Americans that can't get medication and health care, because that would be socialism, and yet you're going to give all this money to the Venezuelans to make Venezuela great again. with all these Americans that voted for Trump, including Democrats that voted for him, saying, hey, you promised us that you would not get into more wars. You got into more wars. You promised us no more regime change and stuff like that, and arrests. You're defending, again, and I don't know if this is true or not, but apparently there's like over 1 million documents pertaining to the Epstein files that have been let out, and not a single not a single perp walk. How is that even possible? Marjorie Taylor Greene, he said, she said, but she's like, when she brought it up to Trump, he's like, no, I'm not going to go after it because it's going to hurt my friends. Well, fuck Trump. What a faggot. You know what I mean? Like, I'm so disappointed in Trump. He was supposed to be the good guy, right? But again, I keep my expectations low, so I'm never disappointed. So Trump lied like every other politician. But the thing is he's doubling down on all this neocon stuff. Almost every single thing, like he was supposed to make the cost of living go better. He was supposed to shrink the government and start balancing the budget. Instead just more money for Israel and the Ukraine. You know what I mean? He was supposed to end the Ukrainian war and get a peace deal. Okay. Now the 24-hour peace deal, nobody believed that was going to happen. But he could at least, what was the point of humiliating Zelensky? Number one, he shouldn't have really needed to do that. That was just Jerry Springer stuff. Like, Trump is just a complete ass clown at this point. He had an out from the Ukraine. Okay, sent them packing, no more aid, we're done. Save the taxpayer, American taxpayer some money, right? Out of Iraq and Afghanistan and Syria, oh, no, we got to go back in. We got to put troops back in. Again. Apparently the Afghanis shot down a pretty advanced U.S. drone the other day. Yeah. Again, the Houthis and the Iranians, they're going to arm the people in that region. So the Americans are about to go into physical conflict with probably about 40 to 45 countries. They are going to lose a lot of people. You're probably going to lose a couple of million people in that. So what are they going to do? Lash out, well, we've got to get a win, so we're going to take on this country that can't defend itself. Well, eventually those countries are going to get armed up. I'm sure as we speak, Cuba is probably taking on new weaponry. And I'm sure they have some Cold War surprises left. Florida will be new. If you go after, I'm pretty sure the Cubans will be ready to respond. Like what it was for years, because none of the countries are in solidarity, right? Iran has changed this to a degree. And the Israelis know this, the Americans know this, that the main advantage that the Greater Israel Project had in the Middle East is that all the Arab countries were completely divided, right? So you could pick them off one at a time. You could pick off Iraq because it's not in solidarity with anybody else, right? But if you get Iraq and Iran in solidarity and have a mutual defense pact, and with Syria, and you start to see it with Iran and Syria, right? And it sort of worked. That's how the Syrians were able to hold off ISIS for so long. Yes, the Russians helped, but it was mainly the Iranians that were fighting, the U.S.-backed ISIS and Israeli-backed ISIS. Like 40 nations were backing ISIS. They just called them moderate rebel groups, but when you track them, and now they got the new guy in there, which is no threat to Israel because he's just just a tyrant there in Syria. Now Syria lost, but that said, if the alliances between Syria and Iraq and Iran become a super PAC, Israel screwed number one. And then, of course, if they pull in Afghanistan on this and a few other countries, there's nothing the U.S. can do in the region. Nothing. You just, and if, we've got to go to war with these guys because they're tyrants, well, then you can go fucking die there if you want. Like, you know what I mean? Like, at what point you got to realize you're the bad guy? Like, the United States military is the bad guy. It's the one going around killing everyone. They're not protecting people. They're killing people. It's a hard truth to swallow. Many Americans are in the process of that. Hence why they're nationalists now and true MAGA. This is why you got the Groypers. This is why you got all the what they call the far right. Is these people don't want this stuff. They know that, okay, you know what? The comfort we lived under the petrodollar came at the expense of murdering other people, in other countries, okay? On behalf of Israel, mostly. It's time to stop that. Trump is keeping it going when he got elected on getting rid of this. Where's the Q and the Patriots and the White Hats arresting all these pedophiles? Arresting all, almost every one of these people is on the fucking Epstein list, including Trump. You know what I mean? The phone calls and all that between Trump and, again, maybe it's real, maybe it's not, but, again, there's enough photographs of Trump and Epstein together, and, you know what I mean? Like, they more than just acquaintances. And I think that's probably what they have on Trump. But, no, the MAGA people aren't looking at the Venezuelan kidnapping, the great Venezuelan kidnapping, as a win. The oil companies are not ready to jump into Venezuela on behalf of Trump because, okay, well, you stole their oil. Like, are they really going to risk their people going in through the Venezuelan jungle? You're about to see, South American kidnappings of American tourists go through the roof in retaliation to this. You're about to see, Nicaragua and whatever, maybe Chile, start to back Venezuela and whatever. Again, Mexico, threatening to attack Mexico. Yes, okay, there's a lot of issues with Mexico. You don't need to attack them, you just need to lock down the border. You know what I mean? And again, that's all, it would have been cheaper anyway. You want to stop those Venezuelan boats, you stop them, and then you make your arrest and you make an example. Everybody be on board for that. The Venezuelans would be, the U.S. people would be, saying, look, we actually are stopping the drugs coming. But the flip-flop of the story, at first it was about drugs. It's the same thing that they're saying about Canada. It's like, oh, well, Canada's letting all this fentanyl in. It's like they seize like 1.5 ounces of fentanyl at the border, in like a month. Okay, that could kill a lot of people. I'm not saying it doesn't, right? And that person seized should get the death penalty. I'm all for that. Whether it's on the American side or the Canadian side, that should be you get caught selling fentanyl at all, it's death penalty. Yeah. But the thing is that the desperate act of stealing people's stuff, trying to use it as a mega win for the MAGA base to do anything but what they elected you to do, and Trump can't figure out why he's falling in the polls, and he's sitting there whining about how they're going to impeach him and throw him in jail. Well, yeah, because you're doing criminal things. Okay, yes, I know the Democrat, when Trump was doing the right things, yes, you could critique yes, they did steal the election on him. That's clear as day. You watched it in real time. It was easy to prove that. The fact that they let the election go on for like a day and a half, until they won, until they got the results. When the election was over, he was clearly ahead. You know what I mean? But no, we're going to keep it going. We're going to keep it going. Like these ongoing elections that last multiple days. No, we've for years and decades have been able to solve an election in one night. 12 o'clock, election's over, stop counting. Or you can count the ballots that are there till the morning, whatever. But no more voting. You know what I mean? So yeah, and yes, they did attack him again. The left is responsible for where we're at too, because they created the conditions for Trump to take power, right? Rather than a true mega, America first. Look, you're going to have to live through the collapse of the petrodollar. That's just plain and simple. American exceptionalism is dead. The Monroe Doctrine and hemispherical, good luck with that. You're not going to be able to enforce it without getting a whole bunch of Americans killed. You know what I mean? Like if you want to join with us Canadians in the Arctic as partners, we're happy to have you. We're already set up. Let's go. You know what I mean? We can defend against the Russians. We can defend against the Chinese. You want to steal resources from Canada? Well, again, the Canadian-American relationships are going to be tarnished for the next 30 years. And Canada's only going to get stronger. Look, Carney said something interesting. Now, again, I know nobody believes him on day one. We're only not even a year into his prime ministership. But the thing is what he says, look, if the United States doesn't want to lead, we will. And anywhere the Americans are letting up the reins, we're grabbing them. And we're competing with the United States now. The United States is not used to that because Canada can compete in a lot of ways. We can outcompete them. There's areas where they can't compete with us at all. And that's going to turn Canada into a superpower within the next, 2 to 4 years. Uh, Most of my Canadian audience watching this don't believe me because they're not thinking about the way I'm trying to remove as much emotion out of this as possible and partisanship out of this as possible. I'm just saying consequences have actions. When you do positive things, you tend to get positive results. When you do negative things, you tend to get negative results. So when the U.S. Navy starts getting blown out of the water by torpedoes, and you have all these neocon Americans going, "We need to avenge our people. They just attacked us for no reason." Well, first off, you got to check your ignorance because no, actions have consequences. You don't steal a leader from another country and then think you're going to go in there and not have your guys kidnapped and executed and stuff like that. Like at some point, yeah, if Venezuela, they got the one up on the Venezuelan because again, clearly they had inside. It was an inside coup. You know what I mean? Like there's no way you could fly into a country without getting shot at all, and there the stand down. Now you say, well, maybe it's the majority of the Venezuelan people wanted that. Okay, that's fine, right? But that's not how this was sold. And not only that, it's like, why are you interfering in their politics? You know what I mean? Oh, but they're selling oil to the Iranians and the Chinese, and they're not allowed to do that. So, as an act of war, you're telling the Iranians you can't have oil because I said so. Well, they're saying, what if they say no? You know what I mean? Now you're at war because you chose to go to war with them. Like the Iranians didn't choose to go to war with us. You know what I mean? And all these neocons out there, oh, they're terrorists. Hezbollah's there. Blah, blah. They probably are. They probably are. I'm sure resistance forces are being trained up in South America all over the place. That's not new. You know what I mean? But the thing is why do they exist in the first place? Al Qaeda exists because the United States and Israel created them. You know what I mean? Like it's very well documented. But the thing is that if you stay out of their countries and just maybe try a policy of leaving the fuck alone, maybe you can say what a better strategy would have been to say, okay, we don't like Maduro, but hey, how about this? We'll come in, we'll help you with your resources, okay? But here's the caveat: you got to help the people. It can't just be another. And again, the new boss is going to be the same as the old boss in Venezuela. Like, there's no regime change, right? I don't think it's going to devolve like it did in Iraq into all these little sectarian violence, but it could. Like I'm sure there's going to be a civil war in Venezuela now. Thank you, Mr. Trump and America. You know what I mean? Because when you remove people from power, especially these dictators, and a lot of people don't get this. I don't like dictators. Nobody likes dictators. I get that. But you have to understand the strongman theory and that these countries will fall apart in 5 minutes when you take the authoritarian out of it. There's a reason why they exist. It's not because you like them, but it's because if you don't have that iron fist or whatever running the country, unfortunately, you either get a tyrant or you get a king. Now, we have mostly tyrants on the planet, not kings. Trump is not a king. There's this German girl who lives in what you call it, El Salvador, and she makes these videos. They're really, really Lena something. Anyway, real in depth, smart girl, real in depth, and she made some interesting observations about international order. She goes, there technically really is no international law. There is no real international order. And she's right and she's wrong. She's right in the sense that there is just kind of like a coalition of the willing when it comes to international law. But there is also maritime law, right? Which is most law before the Magna Carta was based on maritime law. Basically rule of the sea, right? But it's still participatory and like basically gentleman's agreement. There's no real law on the sea that says every nation is beholden to this, right? So the idea of the maritime law was to deal with piracy back in the 1500s, right? And, and the 1400s and what have you. And she's right. She goes, basically, this idea that the rules-based international law have been broken by Trump. Well, technically, there's no real laws that he's broken on the high seas per se, other than maritime law. And who upholds that law, right? So it's might make right. If you can't, it's that. This is why the UN is so useless. It's like you can, disavow somebody forever and a day, but if you don't have the big stick to tell them to go fuck off, You know what I mean? This is why Canada is making the Nordic alliance. Look, the Finns know that at some point Canadians are going to have to fight alongside them, holding off the Russians. So it's best that the Finns and the Canadians get used to working with each other in the high Arctic, right? The Norwegians understand this. The Swedes understand this. This is why these alliances are being made, right? And the Nordic alliances, I do see Canada, Greenland, Norway, Iceland, Sweden, Kingdom of Denmark, Finland, kind of very like-minded in a lot of stuff. And I think that the way we're set up, it's like we're probably the perfect nations to best understand on how to deal with the Russians in the north, right? We just, again, like when Americans train in the Arctic, they're learning Canadian techniques, they're learning Finnish techniques, they're learning Norwegian and Swedish techniques and stuff like that. They're learning Danish techniques. Why? Because we know how to fight in the Arctic. The Americans are not good at that. That's why Canada, again, you don't want to fight Canadians in the Arctic because we know how to do it. Unfortunately, though, the Russians also know how to fight a winter war, and they're good at it too. Why? Because I mean, the best soldiers for Russia for fighting in the Arctic would be the people in Vladivostok because they're used to minus 75. Like it's unbelievably how cold it gets there. Trust me, they would know how to do sabotage in minus 75. If you knew how to do that, trust me, you won't even your stealth jets don't work in minus 75. You know what I mean? Radar and thermal imaging doesn't work well in minus 75. JDAMs can't guide themselves in minus 75. You know what I mean? This is what people don't understand. Everybody thinks everything's like a video game or a Hollywood movie. No, most JDAMs can't even function in a little bit of a dust storm or fog. You know what I mean? It's this is why they have to have redundant systems. Guided in by coordinates, guided in by laser guided in by whatever. You know what I mean? And it's one of those things that once you realize nature is your biggest weapon you have and you know how to exploit that, at that point, especially when it comes to mobility in the Arctic, Canadians, outside Russia, Canada is the most mobile in the Arctic. This is why I get so mad at Trump when he says stupid things like, oh, Canadians going to have to build, pay for their icebreakers. I'm like, are you fucking kidding me? We're building them. We're building them faster than you are. It's like it's fucking Canadian owned companies that are building the American icebreakers. It's okay, there's some in Finland. I mean, there's a big partnership that's going on with the icebreaker, right? But the Americans are going to get, okay, right now Finland, Canada, and the United States are getting the icebreakers built in Finland for certain ones, but there's some off the coast of Quebec, some in the Seaspan out there in BC, some in the Irving building ship companies busy building our warships now. We don't know where our next submarine's coming from, but that could be 2035 before we see that. But we could buy stopgaps. I mean, we could get 3 Scorpion submarines from Chile. I don't know what condition they'd be on, but they were built in the 90s, so they're probably still good for another decade or two. And stuff like that. Get some old French nuclear submarines and British nuclear submarines. You know what I mean? For the Arctic, we could do that. You know what I mean? And then maybe the French that are building those beautiful Barracuda subs, the Sulfin class subs there, if Canada could start getting some of those, no one's going to fuck with us in the Arctic. You know what I mean? Those things are nice. You want to see some powerful submarines, there you go. But what I'm getting at is that Trump miscalculated on this to distract from the bad economy, from his bad policies, the disaster of everything going up in price because of these tariffs, the food crisis that's hitting the United States. I know some Americans don't believe there's going to be a food shortage in the United States, but I'm going by what the farmers are saying. And I cannot find farmers out there countering other farmers saying, oh no, that farmer's just full of shit. My farm's doing fine, blah, 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 blah. No, almost like you've got a record of bankruptcies of farmers. You've got all those things that I've talked about, issues of just the bad farming season from last year. You've got the dwindling cattle. In Canada, the cattle is going up. herds are going up. But again, we're going to get hit too because we have that intertwining of the two economies. Trump is not only going to hurt the United States, but he's going to hurt Canada too. So this is what Carney's trying to outrun: the collapse of the United States. So our economy, good, bad, gamble. Will the gamble pay off in time? Well, if we start diverting that oil to the coast from Alberta to go overseas, like it's the United States saying, "Oh no, you can't sell oil to Japan anymore or China or whoever." Like Trump might do that, so we need to start building up our military very like ASAP. Meaning, okay, maybe we pick up, just what we could probably get on the used market. Sure, it won't be brand new stuff, but just numbers. 2,600 tanks. We can get Leopard tanks, 1s, 2s, 4s. Modify them a bit for us. We'll probably get about 2,600 fighter jets. Sure, they won't be state of the art, but they'll be big enough numbers that no one's going to fuck with us. We'll be able to patrol the Arctic. Be ready for any U.S. invasion. And we have to contemplate that now. Keep building the shoulder-fired weapons that we're building in mass numbers. We need to at least build at least 100 Stinger missile MADPAD launchers per week, indefinitely. The idea is to have thousands of them so that we can shoot down drones, whatever. Drones, we got to pick up our drones. And then mobile artillery. We can probably get about 520 of those overnight of old M109s. We have about 60 of them. Get those going. Get Rheinmetall to start, we'll use stopgap. You know what I mean? Like, get that stuff cheap. Like, just get it everywhere. Place it out. Do the Finnish strategy. Get ready for an American invasion, what we would do if they invaded, so we don't get caught off guard like Ukraine. Air defense systems we got to bring those back online again and get new ones. So just bring all the old stuff back online, get a bunch of stopgap stuff, get about 30 submarines, which we could probably swing about between Lend-Lease and actual buying, probably about 30 older submarines. Yes, it would be expensive to run this stuff, but again, you can come up with a program where you just have stuff in like ready to fight condition and just, cycle the stuff until you can get building SOP Gripens in Canada, which we're going to have to make major investments in that. Bombardier is probably going to have to build the engine for it, which it has the technical abilities to do. But we're going to have to come up with we can't use a General Electric design. Maybe we can use a contracted, Rolls-Royce design or a Rotax design. Or if we can do our own Bombardier engine, start working on that now. Get the SOP Gripens so that the Americans can't block the sale of them. Because the Americans can block the SOP Gripen from us buying them. This is why we should buy stopgap first. But they can't stop us from buying French stuff because the French have full autonomy on their weapons industry and the British have most autonomy. So personally, I'd love to see us get a bunch of Eurofighter Typhoons or Rafales, if we can't get the Gripens. The F-35s, yes, let's just get those F-35s at, those 16 that we ordered, get them to cancel or just don't do anything with the contract because we can't trust the Americans won't shut these things off in flight, right? And they have the ability to do that. People say, oh, they can't do that. Yes, they can. So we have to start strategizing for that because it is going to come to a head. The American regime is lashing out at everybody right now because it doesn't know what to do. And when people start fighting back, i.e. on the high seas, and you see freighters starting to RPG U.S. helicopters, which will get these freighters sunk, then you're going to see basically warship to warship patrols, where the whole point of the U.S. Navy after World War II was to keep the seas clear of piracy. But what happens when the protectors become the pirates, right? And that's exactly why are you defending Saudi? Why are you defending the Iranians and the Venezuelans? Not defending them. I'm saying you can't steal their oil. It doesn't matter whose oil it is. You can't steal it. And if you steal it, that's piracy. And just own up to it. It's not American doctrine. It's not keeping America safe. It's not good for the American taxpayer. It's not America first. It's piracy. If any other, let's say the Russians, they attacked a Turkish freighter in retaliation for the Turks attacking theirs, right? The Iranians have been doing the same thing. The Houthis have been doing the same thing. Again, going after the freighters. Like the Houthis don't have the right to steal the Israeli freighters, but they do it because that's what the U.S. is doing to them, right? So yeah, piracy, like we're about to see like major global piracy shoot through the roof from governments. This is very, very, and backed by big corporations because we don't put any of these evil cocksuckers in jail for getting our world into this state. The banksters, start with the banksters, the politicians. And again, if we had brave law enforcement, military, we don't. We just have jackboot thugs following order, unfortunately. But if we did, they could wrangle this. You know what I mean? I mean, look, they could have gotten all the Epstein people New Year's Eve at an island, okay, in the Caribbean. That was basically a hop, skip, and jump from the Epstein Island. Okay, you had 172 like super yachts there from all this billionaire class. Most of them on the Epstein list, right? And you couldn't send a single fucking, you couldn't arrest a single person there. You couldn't send a single team there. Again with warrants and all that. And the blessing of the island. You know what I mean? So why are we in the situation we're in? Because of that. Because all these guys that are okay with blowing innocent people. Look, at least you had one naval commander or captain step down saying, look, I'm not going to be a part of a pirate navy. You had one guy in the entirety of the U.S. military do something honorable. Like, and I know people get mad at me when I trash on them. I was like, oh no, it's not all of them. It's like after like, the 2020, the good people in the FBI. Well, it's not all of them. The good people in the CIA. It's not all of them. They're all in on it. They're all going with it. None of them will step up for the people. And until they do, we're going to have all this tyranny. And again, do the right thing. Yes, we are going to see a military coup in the States. We're going to see a civil war in the States because Trump is ensuring that because of these dumb neocon moves. The left will never accept the right. I get that. And the right, doesn't have much tolerance for the radical left. I get that too. But they will leave each other alone if you're not agitating things such as attacking other countries. You know what I mean? But again, if there was ever a time for a new party, a true America First Party or a true Canada First Party, and it doesn't mean you have to cut out the world. It means you have to put your people first. And you don't do it by making them suffer with sanctions and tariffs and stuff like that. You do it through cooperation with other nations saying, look, we've got to protect our jobs here. You got to protect your jobs there. Let's find a balanced system. It's not going to happen overnight. It's not easy, but it's the way to go and the least disruptive. But no. Our politicians have to make sure we fucking suffer all the time. These are evil fucking people. Trump is among them. He was supposed to be the good guy. Unfortunately, he's not. So that said, that's the chaos we're at right now. So the whole Venezuelan thing seems to be a bit of a farce as a distraction. So people aren't paying attention to the Epstein thing. So they're not paying attention to the bad economy. But when people are in it, they kind of experience it. It's kind of hard to hide it or mask it. So Trump fucked up again, big time. The cheerleaders that are double downing on it, again, if the war in Iraq was a false war, and again, listen to the veterans. They're like, no, we already played this game of regime change and bullshit like that. I pray that the Venezuelan people don't just dissolve into civil war, but they're probably going to because the guy that was maybe not a nice guy, but keeping the order and the peace. And again, when you look into what Maduro stood for, again, not having a Rothschild bank there, he was probably the best the Venezuelans could get. This new lady, I have imagined she's going to be like, an even bigger tyrant. And, Trump's already threatening her. He's going to kill her. And she's threatening because you're threatening them. That's it. Leave them alone, they'll leave you alone. Oh, but the drugs, it's the drugs. Okay, well then use the Coast Guard to catch these boats and arrest people. Do it through rule of law. Uphold rule of law, not through piracy. Not through, hey, we're just going to execute people willy-nilly on the high seas and call it, sphere of influence. When you don't even know who you killed or what they had with them or if they had anything with them. Yeah. And then after you destroy their country, Let's invite in all the refugees. Yeah, so it destroys your country. Like again, how is Trump? How can anybody be on Trump's side at this point? He's betrayed his base big time, big time. Anyway, there you go.